The smell of damp hay and horse sweat clung to her like a second skin. It masked the fear, but did little for the cold that had seeped into her bones days ago. Eleanor pressed herself deeper into the corner of the stall, beneath the manger where the straw was thickest. Her breath plumed in the frigid air, a fragile, visible testament to her existence in this hidden world. Bruises bloomed on her arms, silent reminders of the life she had fled, of the man who thought he owned her as surely as he owned his hounds and his horses. She had found refuge here, in the belly of the beast, so to speak, a place of warmth compared to the biting wind outside, a place of concealment she prayed no one would think to search. The horse above her shifted, a massive, restless presence. She could feel the tremor through the floorboards, hear the soft snuffling, the occasional heavy sigh. It was meant to be a racing horse, or so she'd overheard the stable hands say. Fast, spirited, a prize, just like she had been, briefly, before the spirit was meant to be broken. A floorboard creaked outside the stall door. Eleanor froze, every muscle locking, every nerve ending screaming. Footsteps, heavy, deliberate, not the frantic search of her pursuers, nor the shuffling of the stable boy. These were slow, measured. The stall door groaned open. A rectangle of gray light pierced the gloom, silhouetting a tall, broad-shouldered figure. A man. He didn't immediately look down. His attention was on the horse, running a practiced hand down its leg, checking its fetlock with a quiet competence that spoke of long hours spent around these animals. He murmured something low to the horse, a sound too soft to decipher, but the horse seemed to settle slightly. Eleanor willed herself into invisibility, shrinking further into the shadows, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. She focused on his boots, caked with mud and dust, solid and worn. Then, slowly, his head lowered. His gaze swept the stall, calm and steady. It lingered on the deeper shadows beneath the manger. Time stretched, thin and fragile. She saw his eyes adjust, saw the moment they registered something wasn't quite right. Something wasn't just straw and shadow. His body tensed almost imperceptibly. He wasn't startled, not outwardly. Instead, a profound stillness came over him. He didn't call out. He didn't recoil. He simply looked. Eleanor couldn't breathe. Shame warred with terror, shame at being discovered in such a state, terror of what he might do. Would he shout for the stable hands? For the sheriff? Would he be like all the others, seeing only something to be exploited or discarded? His face was rugged, etched with sun and wind, unreadable as stone. He had a dark beard, dusted with gray. His hat was pulled low, shadowing his eyes, but she felt their weight, assessing. He remained silent, a sentinel in the doorway, and the silence was heavier than any shout could have been. It hung between them, thick with unspoken questions and desperate, unheard pleas. She was trapped, exposed. Her fragile sanctuary had been breached by a man who had come for a horse, and instead found her. He didn't alert anyone. That was the first bewildering thing. After that agonizing moment of discovery, he simply straightened up. He ran his hand along the horse's neck one last time, murmured another quiet word, and then, without a backward glance in her direction, he turned and walked out of the stall. The door closed with a soft thud, plunging her back into near darkness. Eleanor stayed frozen, listening to his footsteps recede, then the low murmur of voices. They spoke of the horse, its lineage, its potential speed. She heard the jingle of coins, the sharp tear of paper as a bill of sale was signed, the sound of hooves on straw as the horse was led out. Her sanctuary was gone, the horse taken, and she was left alone again in the empty stall, only the residual smell of the animal remaining. But the man had not betrayed her presence. Why? Hours passed. The stable grew quiet. The light faded outside. Hunger gnawed at her, a hollow ache. She had water, a small, dirty canteen she'd managed to fill, but no food. Her body ached from lying cramped for so long. Just as despair began to settle, a faint light appeared beneath the stall door. The door creaked open again. It was him. He carried a small lantern, casting dancing shadows. In his other hand, He held a tin plate and a dented metal cup. He didn't enter fully, just stepped inside the threshold. He placed the plate on the floor a few feet from her, pushed it gently with his boot. Hardtack, dried meat, beans. Simple food, but it looked like a feast. He set the cup beside it. Water. Clean water. He still didn't speak. His eyes met hers in the lantern light, steady, appraising. There was no pity there, but also no contempt. Just a quiet, assessing look. It disarmed her more than any words or threats could have. She watched him, hesitant, wary as a cornered animal. Her stomach protested violently. He waited, patient. Slowly, tentatively, she crawled forward. He didn't move. She reached for the plate, her hand trembling. Her fingers brushed against the cold metal. As she began to eat, slow and deliberate, as if proving she wouldn't bolt, he finally spoke. His voice low and gravelly, surprisingly gentle for a man of his stature. "They lookin' for you." It wasn't a question. It was a statement of fact, delivered without judgment. He knew, or he suspected strongly enough. Eleanor stopped eating, her hand halfway to her mouth. She didn't look up. A silent nod was all she offered. What could she say? Yes, they were looking. A prominent man's runaway property. A woman who dared to refuse her prescribed fate. He waited again. They offered a reward, he stated this too flatly. The air thickened with unspoken possibilities. Was this why he hadn't turned her in? Waiting for a better price? Or was he testing her? She risked a glance at his face. Still unreadable. The lantern light cast long shadows, deepening the lines around his eyes and mouth. He didn't seem like a man driven by easy money, but the world was full of surprises, most of them unpleasant. She swallowed the dry food, her throat tight. "I got nothin'," she managed, her voice a hoarse whisper. He gave a small, almost imperceptible shake of his head. "Ain't about that," he murmured. He glanced towards the stable entrance, then back at her. "Need to move. Can't stay here." It wasn't an offer of help. Not yet. More like stating the obvious next step, a necessary consequence of her discovery. The unspoken question hung heavy. Would she follow? Could she trust this silent, stoic man who had bought the horse she'd hidden beneath, and found her instead? They moved under the cover of pre-dawn darkness. He didn't ask her name, and she didn't offer it. He simply led the way, a silent, purposeful figure, guiding a sturdy pack horse laden with his gear. He had given her a worn, but clean, blanket and a heavier coat from his stores. She walked behind him, stiff and sore, her mind a whirlwind of fear and uncertainty. Every rustle of leaves, every distant coyote howl, sent shivers down her spine, conjuring images of the men who were searching for her, their anger cold and hard. He seemed immune to it all, his stride steady, his focus forward. He moved with the quiet confidence of a man who knew the land, who understood its indifference and its subtle dangers. Their journey was one of stark, shared silence. Days blended into a rhythm of walking, sparse meals eaten by a low, carefully shielded fire, and nights spent beneath the vast, indifferent sky. He spoke only when necessary, directions given with a curt nod of his head, warnings about rough terrain or changing weather, brief, practical instructions. Water here, rest now, storm comin'. His silence was not unfriendly. It was simply the absence of unnecessary noise. It was a silence she came to understand as protective, a quiet shield against the chaos she had fled. He didn't pry. He didn't ask about her past, about the bruises, about the fear that still clung to her like mist. He simply accepted her presence as a fact, a problem to be dealt with through quiet action and careful planning. She watched him, watched how he set up camp with swift efficiency, how he cared for his horses, how his eyes constantly scanned the horizon, missing nothing. He was capable, resourceful, a man perfectly adapted to this harsh, unforgiving landscape. He was also unexpectedly kind in small, profound ways. He always ensured she had the warmest spot by the fire, left her the larger portion of their meager food, poured her water first. These weren't grand gestures, but quiet, consistent acts of consideration that slowly, tentatively, began to chip away at the wall of fear and mistrust she had built around herself. He didn't demand gratitude, didn't expect anything in return. He simply did these things, and in doing so, he created a small pocket of safety for her in a dangerous world. One afternoon, as they crossed a wide, exposed plain, he stopped abruptly. He held up a hand, a silent command to halt. His body tensed, his gaze fixed on something far behind them, shrouded in the shimmering heat haze. Eleanor followed his gaze, her blood running cold. 2 riders, coming fast. Her breath hitched. They had found her. Fear, sharp and visceral, clawed at her throat. She looked at him, expecting panic, or perhaps a grim resignation. But his face remained calm, alert. He didn't hesitate. "Other side of that ridge," he murmured, gesturing to a line of low hills ahead. Now there was no time for questions, no time for fear. His urgency was infectious, overriding her panic. She scrambled to follow as he quickly remounted his horse, leading the pack horse, his eyes still flickering between the approaching riders and the ridge. They rode hard, the wind whipping past her ears, the ground blurring beneath her feet. The silent journey had taken a sudden, terrifying turn towards confrontation, a test of the fragile, unspoken trust that had grown between the woman in hiding and the man who had found her instead of a racing prize. They reached the ridge just as the riders cleared the plain, their forms now distinct against the sky. He dismounted quickly, tethering the horses in a small, rocky hollow that offered concealment. "Stay low," he ordered, his voice quiet but firm. He took a rifle from his pack, checked the action with practiced ease, and moved to the crest of the ridge, melting into the rocks. Eleanor crouched low, her heart pounding, straining her ears to hear over her own frantic pulse. She could hear the thudding of the approaching hooves now, hear the occasional shout. They were close. From her vantage point, she could see the 2 men clearly as they rode up the slope towards the ridge. They were rough-looking, armed. The sight of them solidified the cold reality of what she had fled, of the danger that relentlessly pursued her. She saw the man her man. She realized with a jolt, the silent stranger who had become her unlikely protector, raise his rifle. He didn't fire immediately. He waited. They came closer, confident they had her cornered. "She's got nowhere to go," one of them yelled, his voice harsh and cruel. Then the crack of the rifle, sharp, sudden. One rider cried out, his horse shying violently. The other man pulled up short, startled. "Up there!" he bellowed, drawing his own weapon. A shot rang out from the ridge, followed quickly by another. It wasn't a prolonged gunfight. He was too good, too precise. A third shot, and the second man slumped in his saddle. Silence fell, broken only by the agitated snorting of the horses below. He reappeared at the crest, his face grim. "They won't be following any further," he stated, his voice flat. He didn't elaborate, didn't need to. Eleanor emerged from her hiding place, trembling but alive. She looked at the scene below, then at him. There was a grimness about him, but no triumph. He had simply done what was necessary. He resecured his rifle, his movements calm and economical. "We keep going," he said, already moving back towards the horses. The immediate danger had passed, but the weight of it settled heavily in the air between them. He didn't ask if she was all right. He didn't need to. He simply acknowledged the shared ordeal with a brief, steady look. As they rode away from the ridge, the silence returned, but it was different now. It was no longer just the absence of sound. It was filled with the unspoken acknowledgement of what had happened, of the life he had saved, of the bond forged in necessity and shared peril. They rode for several more days, putting distance between themselves and the past. They reached a small, nondescript town. He led her to a quiet boarding house, secured a room for her, paid for it without a word of explanation. "You can stay here," he said, handing her a small roll of bills. "It's enough for a while." She looked at the money, then up at him. Gratitude swelled within her, too large for words. "Why?" she finally managed to ask, her voice thick with emotion. He looked away, towards the dusty street. Just seemed like the thing to do. His answer was simple, understated, profound. He was preparing to leave. His pack horse was ready, his gaze already turning towards the open road. She stood there, this woman who had hidden in a stable, running from a life that sought to break her, looking at the man who had unknowingly bought a horse and found her instead. He hadn't offered grand pronouncements or promises. He had offered quiet actions, protection, a chance. She had found refuge not just beneath a horse, but in the quiet strength and unexpected decency of a stranger. The fear was still there, a faint echo, but it was now overlaid with a fragile layer of hope, a nascent sense of her own resilience. She had survived. She had been found. As he swung into his saddle, he paused. His eyes met hers. There was a depth there she hadn't seen before, a flicker of something shared. He didn't say goodbye. He simply gave a slight nod, a silent acknowledgement of their journey, of the strange, difficult path they had traveled together. Then he turned his horse and rode away, a solitary figure receding into the vastness of the land. She watched him go, a profound transformation having taken place within her. The woman who had been hiding was gone. In her place stood a woman who had been found, not by a rescuer, but by a quiet ally who had helped her find her own footing, her own strength. The future was uncertain, but she faced it standing tall, rooted by the quiet dignity she had rediscovered in the most unlikely of circumstances. She was not property. She was not broken. She was Eleanor, and she was finally, truly free.